There is something about music that encourages vulnerability. Great hymns that inspire hope, courage, and obedience keep us in touch with our Christian heritage. A Mighty Fortress takes us back to the Reformation and allows us to hear the words of Martin Luther. Joyful, Joyful exposes us to the music of Beethoven and allows us to revel in the melodic mastery of one of the great composers in church history. Hymns remind us of our founders, our history, and our doctrinal distinctives. Hymns embed Christian truths in our minds and hearts. They engage intellect, imagination, and emotion. Christian concepts are tucked away in our minds, ready to be pulled out when we need them. Many were put there by the repeated singing of the great hymns. Our hymns have taught us that God is faithful, that He provides a firm foundation for our lives, that His love will not let us go, and that we should take time to be holy. Let's listen in as we share in hymns that inspire hope, courage, and obedience.
There is a war going on. There is what we call a great controversy that is ensuing. A battle between good and evil, a battle between God and Satan. And by our daily actions, we are showing on whose side we fall on every day. This is what inspired George Duffield when he wrote this beautiful hymn, stand up for Jesus. It was as if he was telling all men that indeed we are in a war. Gird yourselves. Keep your shield next to you, your sword next to you, because we are engaged in warfare. Don't let your guard down. But he was not talking about physical wars. He was talking about a war between good and evil. The Bible says that Satan is like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. The Bible also indicates to us that this great battle that is ensuing between good and evil, as highlighted in the book of Job, is a battle that will continue until we see Jesus face to face. Even though Satan is a defeated foe, as demonstrated on Calvary when Jesus died, the call is for us at this point in time to choose the side that we would fall on in this great battle. Have you ever considered that the choices you make and the choices I make reflect to the world, our family and friends, whose side we are on? I want to be on the side of God. And yes, while it is difficult to always remain on His side, when we depend and ask for His grace will indeed be sufficient for us. When I began to explore the history behind this hymn, I was intrigued to find out that this hymn was originally written for men. It was a gathering of men, in fact, 5,000 men who had gathered for a mass meeting sponsored by the YMCA on March 4th, 1858. Can you imagine a throng of 5,000 men? During this meeting, George Duffield was inspired. The preaching at that event was done by young Dudley Atkins Tyng. And he preached boldly, he preached fearlessly and uncompromising. The verse that he preached from was from Exodus chapter 10 verse 11. The verse said, "Ye that are men, go and serve the Lord. You that are men, go and serve the Lord." Over 1,000 of those men who gathered that day were converted, and the sermon was called one of the most successful of the time. An entire city was being aroused. Indeed, a religious awakening was taking place. The next week, Tyng returned to his family in the country. On Tuesday, April 13, 1858, he was witnessing the operation of a corn thresher in his barn. Raising his arm to place on the head of one of the mules which was walking up the inclined line, one of the threshers caught a loose sleeve that morning and pulled his arm into the threshing machine. His arm was lacerated severely. The main artery was severed and the median nerve was injured. 6 days later, he died. His last words on his dying bed was, stand up for Jesus, Father, stand up for Jesus, and tell my brethren of the ministry wherever you meet them to stand up for Jesus. Now, George Duffield, who was a reverend at that time, was pastor of a Presbyterian church in Philadelphia. He heard about the account of his friends passing away at a memorial service, and he felt so deeply about his friend, and he felt that the last parting words of his friend was so meaningful that he sat down, put pen to paper, and wrote the words of this beautiful hymn, stand up for Jesus. Thus, the dying words of an Episcopal clergyman inspired a Presbyterian minister to write a poem that became a hymn which is used as marching orders to mobilize those who believe in Jesus, to stand up for what is right, to deliver what is truth, and not be ashamed of the gospel. To be able to say, like the Apostle Paul, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power unto men given for salvation. When you listen to the words of this hymn, stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross, lift high his royal banner, it must not suffer loss. From victory unto victory, his army shall he lead, till every foe is vanquished, and Christ is Lord indeed. Stand up for Jesus, the trumpet call obey, forth to the mighty conflict in this his glorious day. Ye that are his, now serve him against unnumbered foes. Let courage rise with danger, and strength to strength oppose. This hymn is calling men to stand up and be men of valor, men who believe in Jesus Christ, men who are not afraid to call sin by its right name. Indeed, the greatest want of the world is the want of men, men who will not be bought or sold, men who in their inmost souls know what is true, men who are not ashamed to stand up for Jesus, to stand up and be faithful, men who are faithful to their marriage vows, men who are faithful fathers, men who are faithful soldiers of the cross. Yes, this hymn calls upon men, and by extension all of us, male and female, to stand up for Jesus Christ, to be counted among those who are not just redeemed, but those who are soldiers of Christ. I thank God that when he saves us, he does not save us so that we may be selfish. No. God does not save us so that we may glory in our salvation and simply thank him for it. No. God saves us so that we may be instruments to save others. What a sacred, what an awesome responsibility that you, wherever you are, and I, right here, it is our responsibility to share this good news and be instruments of the grace of God wherever we are. That is the message of this hymn. Stand up for Jesus. As you listen to Tsepo sing this beautiful hymn, I pray that it will rouse you to action, to faithfulness, to allow you to commit yourself to Jesus Christ in this great warfare that's taking place. May that be your response.
Stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. Lift high his royal banner, it must not suffer loss. From victory unto victory, his army shall he lead, till every foe is vanquished, and Christ is Lord indeed. Stand up for Jesus, the trumpet call obey, for mighty conflict in this his glorious day. Ye that are his now serve him against unnumbered foes. Let courage rise with danger and strength to strength oppose. Stand up for Jesus, stand in his strength alone. The arm of flesh will fail you, ye dare not trust your own. Put on the gospel armor and watching unto pray, where duty calls or danger, be never wanting there. Stand up for Jesus, the strife will not be long. This day the noise of battle, the next the victor's song. To him that overcometh, a crown of life shall be. He with the King of glory shall reign eternally. Stand up, stand up, stand up.
Thank you, Tsepo, for issuing the challenge to us to stand up as soldiers of the cross, to stand up as ambassadors bearing the name of Christ. May our choices, may our decisions, and may everything that we do and say reflect our deep commitment to Christ. Yes, when we stand up for Christ in commitment during this war, we are taking our side with Christ. We are being mobilized for battle. And yes, for this battle, we need to be prepared. We need to march on. And when we get back after this break, we will explore this theme of warfare. And now that we've taken our stand for Christ, we will be mobilized and given the command, onward Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before.